Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome to Don't Retire, Graduate, the podcast that asks you what you want to be when you grow up so you can graduate into retirement with purpose and passion. I'm your host and valedictorian, Eric Brotman. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer listeners' questions about personal finance, retirement readiness, and more. We received a question from Olivia, who asked, "What advice would you give someone today that you wouldn't have expected to 5 or 10 years ago?" Olivia, first, thanks for recognizing that I'm not new at this. This is now my 30th year in the business, so 5 or 10 years ago, not a problem. The reality is that advice does change over time in certain ways, but in other ways, the basics never change. So all the kinds of things that we talk about paying yourself first and avoiding adverse debt, and some of the fundamentals never change. But what does change is economic conditions, market conditions, and even product innovation. And so it is real important to navigate that. And so there's plenty of things that I might suggest to someone today that I wouldn't have 5 or 10 years ago. For example, for many years, I was not a believer whatsoever in a total bond fund. And what I mean by that is a mutual fund or exchange traded fund that owned bonds of lots of different durations always made me nervous. It always felt like the kind of place where you would be punished essentially for someone else's bad behavior, because people would sell out of that fund when interest rates moved and it would work against you. And so I wanted to keep fixed income incredibly short. Well, over the last 30 to 40 years, interest rates did nothing but drop from the 80s until about 18 months ago. And so the advice we were rendering made perfect sense for 40 years. But unless you've been living under a rock, you know that interest rates and inflation and all of these things have spiked over the last year and a half. And so it has changed the landscape for fixed income. And it means that suddenly things like don't hold excess cash, which we might have rendered 5 or 10 years ago because cash was paying zero. Well, that's changed. Now, cash is an asset class again. It might make sense to hold some percentage of your portfolio or your wealth in cash or cash instruments, whether it's a savings account or a money market or a certificate of deposit or a short-term bond. Some of that makes sense. But the fixed income side has changed a lot also. It absolutely makes sense now that interest rates have gotten so much higher. It makes sense to lock in some of those interest rates for a longer period of time. And so it's been basically my entire career that has not been an option, and now it is. So we have to rethink and reconsider those kinds of things when conditions change. Other things that I might have poo-pooed a couple of years ago that now I might not. Reverse mortgages. Reverse mortgages were something when they first came out. They were so expensive and so cumbersome and so difficult that I thought they were absolutely horrendous. And yet now I see them as a viable tool in the right circumstance. And so we'll advise folks to at least explore that as an option, as a way to untap equity in their homes, especially since people are living so much longer. 5, 10 years ago, I might have thought that it made sense to grab Social Security a little earlier, simply because we were all so afraid Social Security wasn't going to exist. And while I'm still not positive that we were going to legislate our way out of the mess, I also now realize that longevity is such a significant issue that in most cases, unless your health is compromised, it makes sense to wait longer to claim. So these are just a couple examples, and I'm sure there are 100 more, but it's one of the reasons why it's important for financial advisors to keep our skills up to date, to keep our continuing education, and to make sure we're still learning, and also to be open-minded, because the things that felt like gospel years ago aren't necessarily true today. And it's important that not only you as a consumer, but we as advisors also understand that. So, Olivia, thanks for the question. It was fun to think about some of the different ways in which advice has changed over the years, and I hope I've shed a little light on that for you. If you'd like to send us a question, which we might answer in a future episode of Office Hours, post it on our Facebook page or tweet us at Brotman Planning. I'd like to thank all of you for listening today. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us a message or leave comments at don'tretiregraduate.com or on social media, and leave ratings or reviews on your favorite podcast platform. Those are priceless to us. If you enjoy the show, please don't keep us a secret. Share it with your friends and family so they can join you on your journey to financial freedom. I thank you for coming to Office Hours. Be sure to tune in for new content every Thursday. For now, this is your host, Eric Brotman, reminding you, don't retire, graduate.
Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, Kestra IS, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC, Kestra AS, an affiliate of Kestra IS. Kestra IS or Kestra AS are not affiliated with Brotman Financial or any other entity discussed.
Imagine how fast we could solve the world's biggest problems if more SaaS startups would gain traction sooner. Welcome to the Tech Entrepreneur on a Mission podcast. This podcast is dedicated to sharing experiences from B2B SaaS CEOs who are going above and beyond to deliver change that is noticed. You will hear their secrets and learn what is required to build a SaaS business that the world starts talking about and keeps talking about, and how to overcome the roadblocks to do so.